right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is very exciting. I know that we were all hoping that SUGCON would be in person this year. It's kind of a bummer that it won't be, but it's very nice to know that we're reaching a global audience and that more people can participate. And I, as you can see, I'm joined by three lovely panelists who will be jumping in a little bit later. So I will introduce them now because you can see them on the screen, and I think it's a little bit weird if you don't know who they are. So I'm joined by Berend, Dominic, and Anna, all of whom are Sitecore Strategy MVPs, all of whom participated in this asset that we're going to be talking about, and all of whom are brilliant. So we've got three super smart people and me, so that you can ask any questions that you might like. Do feel free to drop them in the chat so that we can get to those comments later on. So let me go ahead and get started. Make sure that I've got, all right. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about customer experience and specifically how key customer experience has become to not only building successful relationships with the audience, but also maintaining those successful relationships. Good customer experience generally leaves people feeling heard and appreciated. In my experience, it minimizes friction. It also maximizes efficiency. And maybe most importantly, it maintains a human element, which I think is so important. Every single one of us is a customer. I think as marketers, we sometimes get stuck in the metrics and the KPIs and what we think is the most important thing for the brand. And we sort of forget that we have all of this knowledge within ourselves about what really makes a good customer experience, because we know what we like and we know what drives us to continue to engage with a brand. Over the course of the last, it's now almost a year and a half, which is very, very sobering to think about, and it will be 2 years before we're done, customer experience has moved so much to the forefront because so many of our customers are transitioning into a digital mindset even more than they had in the past. And one of the things that I found really, really interesting about this is that, customers no longer base their loyalty on price or product. They actually stay loyal to companies because of the experience that they receive. And that's mind-boggling to me. It's even more mind-boggling when you think about experience beats product 2-to-1. It beats price 8-to-1. And it beats brand love 3-to-1. And all of those were things that I personally had really gotten in my mind as like, those were important things, and they are important things, but it's so critical to know that experience is starting to advance beyond those metrics, especially for specific audiences. It's really not surprising because we do know that good experience leads to higher levels of customer engagement, which means it also leads to higher levels of customer loyalty. And I just want to take a quick minute to talk about, I think this can, even though I'm sort of hammering it home, it can definitely get lost. But so many customers say that if they had a great experience, they will make another purchase from that same company. Even more importantly than that, 84% of customers say that the experience provided is as important as the product or services, as the service. And customers, this is something that I think we all need to keep in mind, customers are actually comparing experiences across all the brands that they interact with. So they're being influenced by all of these brands. So not just your competitors, not just the people you can name off of the top of your head or the companies you can name off the top of your head, all customers. So all customers are comparing you to all experiences. So you are being judged, unfortunately, and I wish it wasn't true, you are being judged by the same standards as Amazon, as Netflix, as the really big players who do a really good job in creating that consistent loyalty building customer experience. And as customers let us know what they expect, they let us know what they like, they let us know what they don't. And that means that meeting them where they are and anticipating their needs quickly is going to become even more essential. 80% of customers say that they're more likely to make a purchase from a brand that provides a targeted, relevant, and personalized experience. They want that relevant and informed experience to come with rich content, and they want it to be consistent. So no matter what channel they're in, they want that same experience. They want to know that you know who they are. And this does speak to the need to be able to provide consistent and joined up content and a joined up experience, cross-channel, omni-channel, all of that experience, meaning that whether the touch points are digital or even offline, that content and that experience is still consistent. And that brings me to profiling, because I think that Sitecore specifically helps users create those measurable attributes within profiles. This is what I think is so helpful about Sitecore profiling, and why I'm always encouraging my clients to take a longer, stronger look at this tool set, because it really can tell you, it can help you focus your message, it can help you refine your content, and it can, even more importantly, help you understand more specifically what content converts for which audience. So because profiling matches essentially, just to take a quick step back, because I do know sometimes I get caught up in these things and I forget that not everybody is on the same page as me. So profiling matches visitors to a segment based on the content that they view on the website. So that does mirror a lot of interactions in real life. If, for example, you're in a clothing store. If you're in a clothing store and you're browsing in the jacket section, it would not be unreasonable for the clerk who comes up to help you to assume that you might be looking for a jacket. That's the same principle behind Sitecore profiling and pattern matching, is that because we know which parts of the website the customer has been on, and we can extrapolate from that what the customer might be looking for, what the visitor might be interested in. And profiling is a vital step to a uniquely personalized experience. It really can't be overlooked how important it can be and how quickly it can advance that customer experience to the benefit of both the brand and the customer in question. It does allow the audience to tell marketers what they're interested in. And this is my favorite thing about profiling. Instead of trying to guess what the customer is interested in, you can know what they're interested in based on the actions that they take on the website. So it does create a deeper understanding of the audience's interests. It can also have a major impact, again, not only on the customer experience, but especially when you combine it with a broader measurement framework, it can tell you a lot about how your website behaves and a lot about how your customers are engaging with your website. It can help improve things across the board in that sense. These are incredibly valuable tools, especially when it comes to getting to know your audience, targeted personalization, employing that targeted personalization. When they're properly configured and established, this profiling tool set can tell you where your customers are actually going, what they're actually seeing, what they're actually doing. And one thing that I think, we did, and I do apologize for this, because Sitecore named all of these things in the profiling tool set, they all have a P. It's, profile cards, profile keys, pattern cards. I would like to personally apologize for that. I know that it can be confusing. And I think a lot of brands take one look at it and they say, not right now. I don't even know where to get started. But it's been my experience that most brands actually do have the foundation to get started with this already. Because brands are hesitant to do so, that's really the hurdle that I think needs to be overcome. And I did think that maybe lack of information might be one reason why. One of the things that I so love about being part of the Sitecore community is that if you have a question, if you have a problem, if you have something you're interested in and you don't think that there's enough information out there about it, you can reach out to your fellow community members and say, I think we should do something about this. What do you think? And that's exactly what I did. So last year during SUGCON, I called on the community to help out with bringing all of this information that we have collectively as Sitecore strategy MVPs and as community thought leaders, to bring all of it into one place. And they rose to the occasion so magnificently. I am so, so proud of what we managed to come up with. The Sitecore profiling guide, which is live today, and I will be dropping the URL in the chat. It's a community effort that involved over 20 Sitecore strategy MVPs and thought leaders. And we all came together, we collaborated beautifully to bring all of this knowledge, all of these tips and tricks, all of the things that we've learned about profiling into one place, in the hopes that it would make it easier for the next person or the next set of clients. So what the guide covers, we dive into the value of profiling. We also go into the basics and the math behind profiling, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. We talk about developing a profiling strategy and also about how you can, once you've got that profiling in place, how you can actually start to personalize off of that. And I did want to take a quick moment. Not all of those who are with me could, not everyone who was involved could join me, unfortunately, because there were, again, 20 community folks who jumped in. And my animation, I just noticed like blah on the last part of that. My apologies, it was supposed to be much cooler than that. Anyway, there were so many wonderful people who gave their time and shared their knowledge so openly. It's, again, one of the best things about the community. And because of that, when I submitted this white paper, this guide to SUGCON, and wanted to roll it out, wanted to talk about this because I think it's so important, it was also really important to me to have community members with me on this presentation so that we could answer any questions, so that we could really have a collaborative discussion, because that's what this was. This was a collaborative asset that we all came together to build. So again, I've already introduced them, but I wanted to make sure that you had their contact. Brilliant. Anna is a solutions architect with Delete, and Dominic is a lead consultant at InfinityWorks. Berend is a digital strategist, and I do want to know what a people manager is. I'm very curious about that, but with Create, and all three of them have a wonderful, strong background in strategic topics. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, bring everybody back on screen if we can do that, make sure that everybody can join me again, so that we can start talking about profiling and really get into sort of meat and potatoes of what that means and how we can help our customers build a better digital experience through profiling. So this is my first time using StreamYard. I'm hopeful that I can just come back on and that there isn't something that I need to do in order to bring them back, because if there is, I don't know how to do it. Oh, great. Okay, good. I speak and they appear. Wonderful. Love that for me. Makes things so much easier. So I did ask around to just sort of get off to a good start with the questions, just to ask a couple of my friends and my clients what questions they would ask. And one of the ones that I thought was really interesting was this one: how can you measure the success of a profiling strategy? Anna, do you want to start us off? I'm just picking randomly. Now it's about what order you're in on my screen.
Yeah, sure. So I think what's important about profiling strategies and their success is how we use them, right? Because we just don't use profiling for profiling. We want to do something with this information. We want to personalize based on the data we captured about users.
For sure.
So I think, the success of personalization, for example, if you deliver based on your profiling strategy, will be one of the factors you may want to look at and see how your personalization rules perform when you use profiling. For example, your rules based on pattern matching, how do they perform? Do users engage with the website more when they see this targeted content? So, I think that's my view.
Berend or Dominic, do you have anything to add to that? I think that's a great place to start, certainly.
Yeah, I was going to say it's similar to that, isn't it? And I think it's knowing whether it works or not and how you can get to it, but it's also about the learning. So I think it's a very big spectrum of, obviously, you want to understand, is something going to make money or make conversions, but equally is how much you learn in the process. Because I think it comes back to the point you made earlier about this sort of known and unknowns. And that's why profiling is so good, is that we go from this position of thinking we know what we know to actually starting to really know what we know, and we can really then make a difference based on that, rather than having a bit of a guess. It's based on a bit more fact. And I think for me that's the key to it, is once we know that, we're in a much better position, and then we can target the content, and then we can leverage whatever our goals are.
That's an excellent point. I think that's pretty critical, is that the difference between what you think you know and what you know, which is really what there's going to be some person on Twitter who's going to smack me down for this. I can see it happening as I say that, but that's what analytics is for. It's for helping you figure out the difference between what you think you know and what you know.
Yeah, and I think the good people realise that we actually don't know a lot. You know, we might be the experts, but I think we realise, you know, there's so many users out there, isn't it? So many millions of users. We cannot say what each one's going to do. But the more evidence we get, the more data we get behind it, and insights, the much better position we're in.
Yeah, for sure. Baron, did you have anything you wanted to? I saw you nodding, which is great. Like everybody's like, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can you repeat the question one more time? Because my daughter was interrupting. So I didn't get the question.
No, absolutely.
Well.
Just
Sorry.
how can you measure the success of a profiling strategy?
Yeah. Is it me or is Jacqueline freezing?
We all go. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, all right. No, I was wondering if it was my connection, but
nope,
yeah,
I think it was everybody.
Am I? Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. All right. Now
I can hear you. Yep. I think they took away the screen, so I'll try to share that again.
All right. The main goal.
Carry on. Everyone can hear you. Oh, there we go.
No, the way you want to measure success highly depends on the goals you're trying to achieve, right? So for one could start with just understanding how visitors behave and what different audiences there are. Someone else probably wants to know which audiences convert the best. It highly depends on the maturity, I guess, of your organization and your digital marketing strategies. So I think there's not one answer that suits them all, how you can measure the success of profiles, but it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So one important measurement in Sitecore is, of course, the engagement value. So what I always do with customers is start with that and then align profiles accordingly to make sure that we really focus on quality metrics instead of quantity, like page visits. That's an important one for me. And that's for me the starting point for measuring success, also with profiling, of course. So how valuable is a profile over time based on the engagement value?
I think that's critical. That's excellent. Yeah, that's a good point. Apparently my connection is terrible, so I apologize for that. Without restarting my router, I'm not sort of in the middle of the presentation, so others can talk more than me. Are there any sort of bad when it comes to a profiling strategy?
Sorry, Jack, your connection's dropped. Could you just repeat the question?
I think there is bad practice. Well, do we know any bad practices or bad things that happen along the way? I think for me, it's not bad practice, but it's just a lesson learned. It's about naming. Like, it goes with a lot of things, but like the sort of the naming context within Sitecore, you've just got to really make sure that you're labeling things up the right way so that you can find them quite easily and it makes sense because you're on different screens at different times, that you can go find them again and connect up to them, especially when you're going between the profile cards and the pattern cards, is that you can actually make that connection between the two of you. So I think that's one of my key ones.
Yeah, and next to naming convention, it's also about using folder structures, especially in a multi-label or multilingual environment, because it can be quite hard to find your profiles for specific labels or brands or whatever your solution is set up. And of course, it's in the white paper, don't remove a profile card once it's created. It will mess up your entire data set and everything just goes wrong from there.
Definitely, 100% agree. Like I said, it's in the white paper, isn't it, on how to get around that.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah, and if I would add one more tip is, don't try to go too granular from day one. Don't try to cover everything from day one. Just start small and learn as you go. As Dominic, you said, we learn as we know more about our visitors, how they engage with the website, what they do, what they want. So yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's a key bit, isn't it? You can actually, you do the profile side first before the pattern cards. You can actually leave that for a set period of time, so you're actually learning and understanding about who's in what group before you interact with them. So I think it's good sometimes to just actually sit and take stock. It's like with user research and with analytics, you need to hear stuff, see stuff first before you act on it. So, I think that's good.
Yeah, so
I'm back.
basically, what you're saying is just start small, but just start, learn from data, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think I've seen so many people try and attempt it in one big bang. Let's put everything in, and I'm like, no, one step at a time. Pick your key targets, your key obvious. If you know how to profile and which way you're going to profile, pick some of the key ones first. Start rolling them in bit by bit and start learning.
Yeah, and it's also the other way around. I had a customer a couple of years ago that just was afraid to start with personalization in general and looking at profiles because they thought their organization was not ready for it. They were not mature enough. And I was like, yeah, but we can help you with it. Just create some simple profiles, keep it very low level, one-to-one, and just implement it and look at data. Just look at it and don't do anything else. And that's just, I think, the most important key on Sitecore. Keep it small, but start and learn from data. And don't be afraid to make mistakes because you cannot go live, like you said, Dominic, with a big bang and expect everything to work. So people are just too afraid for some reason because it might seem complex, or it is complex because of all the marketing stuff around Sitecore. Hey, Jackie, there you are.
Hey!
Don't be afraid.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Well,
Wouldn't be a
we've just
virtual
done
event.
a bad.
Trouble.
So we just got into bad practice. I think we got the next question about number of profile keys was your next one, I think.
And there she goes again.
So one of our other questions was like the amount of profile keys everyone has or should have or could have. And is there any advice we can give?
I try to keep it small when you're starting for the first time, and it also depends on what you want to achieve. I always use the car example. You can keep it very low level, like someone that is environmental conscious, someone that's more like interested in sports car or more a family type of person, and make a couple of profile keys. But I guess, I don't know what your experience is, but to keep it small for the first part, keep it around 4 to 5 profile keys. That's what I usually do to get started. I don't know, Anna, Dominic, what's your experience there?
Yeah, I'm the same. It's a low level, especially to start off with, isn't it? And especially it depends on the organisation, the client, who's there, and how you want to split it up. Because some of them, e-commerce is completely different than, I don't know, like an information sort of based website, like say like higher ed, university education. That's a completely there's no product to sell. There's nothing there, physically, digitally, but it's a complete different experience over a different cycle as well. I think that's a key bit, isn't it? It's the cycle of your users and how fast they come in and out of your website. Is it over a year? Is it over a week? That can affect how you're going to profile.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's more about quality than quantity of them. You definitely start small, and then you may introduce more profile keys or profiles as you learn more. And yeah, I totally agree, Dominic. It depends also on the website. For example, if it's a B2B platform, maybe there will be a lower number of profiles that are targeted around, I don't know, maybe product ranges or services this company offers. But for universities, it can be like all the subjects they offer.
Yeah, there's different ways to sort of like place it out, isn't it? The next question I've got here was Jacqueline trying to get back on about like shared devices or shared, like computers, things like that. How do we get around that, or can we get around that? So I don't know whether anyone has any thoughts on that or. challenges we've had?
I think if you think about shared computers, before you start catering for these visitors, I think you need to understand what's the volume of these visitors. So do you really want to cater for them? If it's 1% of your website visitors, probably not. But if you definitely know that there are a lot of visitors who are even shared computers, and I think we're going back to this higher education and universities example where visitors can browse from like campus computers or from libraries and so on, then there are a couple of ways how to cater for them. One is obviously we've got this decay rate functionality which we can use so that values from previous sessions do not affect our profiling and pattern matching in the current session. That's one of the ways. Or if you definitely know where these shared computers are, you can also solve it on the with the marketing automation or with the personalization rules, where, for example, you can exclude those computers based on their IP ranges if you know them. So that's another option. I don't know, guys, if you have any other experience with shared computers.
Well, not that much, because when, at least in the Netherlands, and especially on universities, a customer of mine is Yusuf University. They're used to have students bring their own laptop and their own devices, so it's not that much of a problem. But if it is, other than you mentioned, Anna, I don't have anything else right now. I don't know, Dominic, what's your experience?
Yeah, I think the modern world, we're getting more and more devices and more of our own devices. I'm already sat here with 2 phones and a laptop, isn't it? We are getting more and more, but there is those edge cases, isn't it? And I think it depends on, again, comes back to the organisation and what they're offering their services. And is it something that's for a set group of people? Is it for the whole public? And then once you go to the whole public, that's when the issue comes more and more, I think. But no, I like the decay rate's a really good one. I think that's like until at first I wondered why it was there, and then quite quickly you realise why it's there. And I think that's a really good thing for people to get to grips with and understand. Thanks.
I was very, hi everybody, well, I'm back. Good times. But that was one of the reasons I was so interested in that question, because I'd never thought about it and never thought about how that might impact how shared computers might impact pattern matching. So it was one of those edge cases where it's just good, I think, to have that sort of in the back of your mind, is like, that is something, much like as Bernd mentioned earlier, why you shouldn't ever just delete a profile. Like, there are things you should just sort of have in the back of your mind, is like, that's a bad idea, or we should think about that as you're moving forward with a client or with your own company in trying to incorporate a profiling strategy, because the more you know. So I wasn't sure, of course, because I had technical issues. So where we ended up with the on sort of the questions, I don't know if I don't see anybody has had questions from the audience yet, which is fine, because I have lots of questions, so I can just keep talking.
I don't think we've had any, but if you just have, please jump on. Drop some questions
really,
in.
if you got anything, we're definitely here to answer any questions you might have. I am sort of interested in, we were talking briefly about the decay rate. I think that's something that is sort of misunderstood, but what are some of the best use cases you found for a decay rate? And did we explain what a decay rate was for anybody who might not know?
I think we didn't.
That's been happening to me all week. So for those who aren't as familiar with the tool set, there is a functionality with pattern cards where you can essentially set what is called the decay rate. So you can set it for any percentage, I think between 0 and 100. And basically what it does is it says that it lowers the impact of that pattern card the next time the visitor comes back. So if the visitor is still cookied, they come back to your website, let's say you're a travel website, and you've been travel, remember that? I remember travel. And when you first came, you were looking at tropical beach vacations. And if you're still cookied and you're still matched to that tropical beach vacations pattern card, the website will continue to show you tropical beach focused content. Whereas if you set the decay rate for, say, 50%, it means the rate of time to match to a new pattern card, if you come in and you say, actually, I've changed my mind, I don't want to go to the beach, I want to go skiing instead, the amount of time it will take to match to a new pattern card is less. So decay rate is one of those functionalities I think is kind of overlooked frequently because people sort of look at it and they're like, I don't know what that does, so I'm not going to touch it. But I know it can be really useful. So what have you all found really useful about decay rate?
I think for some of my clients, it's been a very good thing to have, but to actually to keep that historical impact of it. So we haven't set it down to low levels, but I can really see if I was doing it for other, like say public sector, I could see ramping it completely up to basically every person's a new person. It's just knowing it comes back to knowing your audience and do they come back to the site often? Do they change their mind? So going back to like the university example, when you're getting a lot of people in at the first time, they're unsure what course they want. So if I was going to group everyone by subject, quite often they change their mind. They'll bounce from dentistry to, I don't know, paramedics, something else. So it's like they will jump around. So to lock them in is probably a bad thing to do. So in those cases, you do like sort of have less of an impact on it. But it's definitely worth just bearing in mind, and again going back to your own history and seeing patterns people do already, and learning from that, saying, okay, yeah, they do jump around. If they do jump around, let's reduce it.
Yeah, that was what I was what I would like to add. That it highly depends on how much time or how many times visitors are changing their interest. And also it depends on your product offering or the way you catalog your products and services. And I think it's also good to do a little bit of research, of course, also based on data of the customer journey, to see how long a journey takes, how long it takes customers to make a decision. If it's a very short period, then probably you don't need the decay rate that much. But if you see that visitors takes up to 2 or 3 months to make a decision for a certain product, it can probably be very helpful to use a decay rate because it's just a longer period of time.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. You've covered that brilliantly. Yes.
That's always nice. It's like, nope, nothing to add, no notes. No, I think that's a good, again, it sort of comes back to, and that was our goal with the profiling guide, was to make sure that we sort of took all of this institutional knowledge that so many of us have because we've deleted pattern cards and filled up the error log as a randomly chosen example that I've definitely never done. Or we've had those cases where decay rate came in really handy, and we wanted to put all of that information into one place so that everybody could have a quick reference guide to some of the things that it took us months or years to learn in terms of best practices. I think that's really, really critical. I did want to talk briefly, so as I sort of transition into strategy, what your thoughts are on like a one-to-one versus the one-to-many profiling strategy, which I know there is a one-to-many to one, which we chose not to explore in the guide because that just makes people's heads explode. So we just narrowed it down to the much more common one-to-one and one-to-many use cases. But sort of what your thoughts are on that and when you recommend one to a client over another.
I think if I look at my clients, they're not that mature yet. So I always start with the simplest version, the one-on-one, just a couple of profile keys, use the percentage scoring and just keep it very simple. And the more data you gather and the more you learn, you can proceed to the next phase, which is a one-to-many, and make it a little bit more complex. That will be my approach for most of my customers right now. And even at my former employer, we had a couple of global customers with high amounts of visitors. And even there, it's very complex to get a good one-to-many because it also No, let me put it the other way. We can configure it, but you have to do something with it. Your organization should also be able to do something with data, to understand what's going on, to use it for deeper visitor analyzing, behavior analyzing, use it for personalization. So I don't have configured that much complex configurations, because a lot of marketers, it just blows their mind how they need to handle it. So it also needs a lot of training and practice for them. So I start with the one-on-one mostly.
I think that point you made about the managing it is really key to it, isn't it? The more you have to manage, the more then time you need to analyze and get the insights ready and stuff. And I think that's a big decision factor, isn't it? That's why we mentioned start bit by bit or start in certainly the one-to-one matches, because at least if you're a sole person in an organization looking after it, you can manage it. The more you get, you need more hands on deck helping you out. Mm-hmm. I'd agree with what you've said. I think it's always that one-to-one to start off with, just because it's something everyone can understand, and then it's going bigger over time. And with the cases I've seen it's been more where you might have a process of a separate, more as e-commerce, but like here's someone who's looking, buying, that type of thing. But it's then when you're like throwing in an extra level of this is a first-time user versus a brand user who's coming back multiple times versus someone who's just window shopping. That's where you get the complexities in there, and that's where I've seen it sort of grow into that one-to-many relationship. But normally it starts off at the one-to-one.
Yeah, my experience is similar. We tend to start from one-to-one, smaller profiles, and then explore them more and enhance them as we go. And there's also one more thing to remember. I hope I can explain it well. It's about the fact that only one pattern card will be matched from the entire profile. Mm-hmm. So if you make your profile too big and too complex, you will only get one profile match. So you need to be careful with this. And don't start with a huge profile, and you will just get one pattern match out of it, and probably will not be able to understand what it means to analyze it.
I would 100% agree with that. I would add to that it takes a lot of content to support a pattern card. I mean, content is the engine that powers personalization. It's the engine that powers so many of our efforts, and profiles are no exception to that. And so if you are starting, or when I have a client who's getting really excited about, we want all of these pattern cards and we want to be able to match all of these things, one of the ways to sort of pull it back a little bit is to do a content gap analysis to see what content you have that can actually support, because it does take, the visitor matches on the fourth page that they hit for patterns. So it takes them 3 pages, like a 3-page visits over the course, and then they match on the 4th page. So if you don't have 3 pages of content, really 4 pages of content to support that pattern card, then it's probably better to sort of shift that to a phase 2 and to think about how to grow the content to support that. I have run into that a couple of times where it would be very valuable for the company to track that, but they just don't have the content to support it.
Yeah, I think it's quite common. My examples of the content team has been very either in-house team or very low on numbers compared to the development side, where there's lots of people that sort of like content is literally potentially one person, and you're like, there's a lot of content to do here. Like I said, the more patterns we have, you're just doubling, trebling everything up. So it's something to really think about, because it takes a lot of time to get content.
It does, yeah. I noticed Alan jumped in to ask who had the mature customers, so I didn't see that in time. We sort of skated past that. But I do think it's a worthy question to talk about. Are there customers, and without giving names if you can't, feel free to white label, but are there people you've seen who do this really well, people who are mature enough to support a one-to-many strategy? I love that all 4 of us are like.
I think there are, but usually it's quite often.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I think usually it requires customers to have their own digital marketing team so that they can support it in Sitecore. But yeah.
The only reason I asked the question was because whenever we want to do something with personalization or almost everything with Sitecore, you want to push it just a little bit. It's always, well, the customer's not mature enough. And the mature customers must be somewhere, but I've just never come across them. Someone's got all those great mature customers hidden somewhere and keeping them for themselves. I think it's very unfair, okay? Share them around. Yeah. It was more an idea but maybe we're getting there, but years ago it was really tough.
Yeah, but I think it's also the combination of all the tools you have. For us, it's common sense to use campaigns, use goals with engagement value, and combine those tools. But for customers, it's just a lot of information, and it takes a lot of time for digital marketing teams to create a strategy around it, because they have also social, they have Google, Facebook, the whole stuff, where they also have a lot of campaigns and analytics. So for us, it's Sitecore, but for the most customers, there's so much more. And profiling is just one thing, but the combination of all the tools makes it, I think, too complex for them to understand and to use the full potential right away. So it takes many, many years for customers to really leverage the platform as it's supposed to be. Yeah. I think that's our biggest challenge as strategy MVPs, right?
Yeah.
I
think like new startups or more newer companies, it's easier to, the smaller numbers, aren't they? And the team's well set. It's like a modern setup within an organization. Some other more established customers, there's layers, there's teams that don't even talk to each other. It's so hard to get everyone on board, isn't it? And that's the common challenge I think everyone has. It's not just personalization. It's quite a lot of things. It's the same. We're trying to get everyone on board together.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also critical to note, and this is something I've been running across more and more, is there are a lot of organizations that might be very mature in one area, and that leads them to the belief that they're very mature across the board, and that can be an interesting conversation to have, or an interesting series of conversations to have. I'm working with a client right now who's probably the most data rich and data mature customer that I've ever seen. They know everything. They know everything about what happens on their website. They know everything about who is on their website, and they have no interconnectivity of that data across, because it's all living in different places, and they have no way of really getting all of it into one place and then feeding that back out to the website to create that personalized experience. So that's been an interesting series of conversations to have, where it's like, well, all of your data collection is amazing. Now we need to make it work for you, which you're not ready to do because you just don't have the infrastructure to support it. So that's been an interesting sort of hybrid of those two things that I've started coming across more and more in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's definitely, I always think it's back to culture, isn't it? Like personalization, optimization, that type of things, it's a very new thing for a lot of organizations. They might be good at it, but to then get that engaged with the business, it's like a cultural change shift, and it's just trying to ease them in. And I think that's why some of the things we've mentioned today, right at the start, the small steps and the learning, that's the key to it. Because once they understand we're going to learn something new to actually deliver against our goals, we're in a much better position.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it's also a matter of the vision and the strategy of the board, right? So from top level, the focus is on creating experiences, and like you said, Jacqueline, in your presentation, it's nice to see. I've created an inspiration session for my customers in the Netherlands, where I had the same research stating that the experience is the key changer, and the things customers basically buy the experience. If the board doesn't have that belief and that vision, then it's never going to work, because a marketer can have that vision, but he's never getting enough budget and people around him to make it work. So I think that's also an important thing. If you see that on the tactical level, there is a vision, but on a strategic level, that we need to scale it up at board level to make sure that they have that same vision and that they believe that it will make a difference. I think that's the only way to make it work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think the most interesting question that I've asked when I'm working across teams and just getting started, asking different teams, what is your website for? What is the purpose of your website? Gets the most interesting answers across different teams and from across different leadership levels. And I found that a really good conversation starter because it can tell you a lot about executive buy-in, about user buy-in, about where the team really is in terms of their willingness to sort of start on this strategic planning journey. So I think we're about to transition into the official Q&A portion, which is pretty funny because we've kind of been doing Q&A this whole time, but I'm excited about that.
Yeah. We've now learned online you get almost no questions whatsoever.
Yeah, everybody's just like, no, we're fine. We don't need anything. We're good. I do want to make sure that the link for the guide is public. So I've been trying to share that. I'm not sure how the StreamYard works, but it'll also be on my Twitter. Make sure that we're making it as public as possible. It'll be on LinkedIn and all of that stuff. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's up here on YouTube yet, but I've also tweeted it.
Oh,
so I'm sure we'll get it out there. I just want to hear you guys. What has been your favorite aspect of working with this white paper, coming together and working on that?
Learning new things from other community members. So it's very cool to see how others use profiling or what tips and tricks they have that I didn't know or was aware of. So for me, that's the coolest thing of the community and working together.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, tips and tricks is the most interesting part because everyone have their own ways of doing things, and community learned a lot about profiling, and it's great that MVPs are sharing this experience.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like it was a live document we were working on. So it's sort of like one person puts something in and you're like, oh yes, I've had that, add an extra bit to it. And then the next person adds it. It's sort of like, it like snowballs, like that knowledge of bouncing off each other is amazing because you log in one day like, oh, why haven't I thought of that? It's a really obvious thing. So I think it's just a good thing to do. It's brilliant.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what subject or what you discuss or how good you are at your job or good at any sport, anything. You can only ever really be cover 80 or 90%. But the minute you even have 2 or 3 people that overlap, usually you'll cover. To be honest, 2 bad developers will easily outperform one good developer, just because 2 perspective, catch different aspects, different size, and covers more. There goes to a point when you have too many people and you get nowhere. But I prefer that end than the loan shark approach.
And
how many were you?
We were 20. There were 20 of us.
Wow.
Yeah, there were a lot of people. And I mean, I think one of the things that kept it, the 2 things that kept it calm were, number one, everyone was really productive, if that makes sense. Like everybody wanted the asset to be good. Everybody wanted to share what they learned and what they knew, and everybody was really positive about that experience. So we didn't have anybody who was like, "Oh, I've never no, you can't do it that way." It was much more, "Oh, I've never done it that way. Can you expand? Like, I don't understand what that means. Can you expand a little bit?" And that combined with how interested the community is generally in sharing the information and sharing what they've learned. So I think it did help that we weren't all in the same room. That might have been a little chaotic. We just had kind of we had a Google document and everybody got the link and it was sort of, come and go as you please. But it really was a lot of fun. When I finally finished it and sort of wrote the last word and was sending it off for design, I was like, oh, we got to do this again. This was fun. Oh, yay. It's in the comments now. Great. So everybody can download it. Hooray.
Good. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. It works quite well with this conversation going here.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah. It turned out very well here. So,
yep.
Well, yeah.
Are we good? I don't remember how long our time slot is specifically, but I think we might.
There's 4 minutes until the next
next.
presentation. So
It's time to leave the stage.
And no playoff music or anything.
Oh. Yeah.
No, this is so fun. Thank you for having us. This was lovely.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Yep.
Bye. Enjoy the
Thanks.
rest of the virtual conference.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Now is the time for solidarity in the face of this threat to all of humanity. I implore leaders to stand together and heed this appeal.